Arlington was incredible. We saw teams like Optic underperform a little bit, teams like Quadrant make history, and so much more. We're going to break down every last bit of it. What's up, guys? This is Why Not Be Reckless, aka Why Not Be Casting. I'm one of the HCS commentators, and we have another HCS Weekly Report where today we're going to be talking about all of the craziness when it came to Arlington, from pool play to bracket play, expectations, and more. Who were your winners, and ultimately, who were your losers going into this event? Either way, it was absolutely incredible. Your boy actually had a chance to commentate it, and I loved every single moment of it. Sorry, let's stop milking. Let's get right into the video. And we're going to start right over towards Pool 1 or Pool A, which everybody mentioned that this was the Pool of Death. You had FaZe, Sentinels, Quadrant, and then ultimately Ascending Baseline coming in. In case you guys didn't know, FaZe obviously made up of Snakebite, Royal 2, Frosty, and Renegade. You have Sentinels, who was a little bit of a newly formed team, Boo Boo Doobu and Falcated, formerly of G1, and then joining them was Lethal and Sparty, the duo that's been rocking together since early year, excuse me. Then Quadrant, Legend, Chick, SLG, and Sika. Those were the three that came in as the top seeds going into pool that were guaranteed. Ascending Baseline coming ultimately out of open bracket, which by the way was so competitive. That was Arctic, Envor, Posey, and Super CC. Envor and Super CC, longtime duo from back in the day, even going into Halo Infinite under Fnatic. We saw these two teaming together. Eventually, Posey joined them, formerly of Proton Gaming, dropped the last moment. By the way, Posey, after Ascending Baseline ultimately beat Proton Gaming, Posey stood up and had some words. We've had Posey on the show. Definitely seems a little bit more like conservative, but he was definitely loud and definitely let his old team know about it a little bit. And then Arctic, who we've seen team with Envor multiple times, even saw them running with Fnatic for a bit, or at least scrimming with them and trying to ultimately get onto that team. Eventually Ascending Baseline coming out of open, but coming out 0-3 when it came to the win-loss column. Ascending Baseline couldn't quite put it together, only eventually taking a game off of Sentinels when going into pool play. FaZe with the 3-0. Quads were able to take a game off of them, only team so far. And I believe when FaZe win, I think FaZe went all the way to the winners bracket finals, only dropping 2 games leading to that. That might have been a little bit of a spoiler alert, my bad. Meanwhile, Sentinels were taken to game 5 by Quadrant, and although Quadrant has shown themselves to be a damn strong pool play team, especially of recent time, they weren't able to come out with the win. Sentinels, to start off our day with and start off our Friday of the weekend, was incredible. Sparty was out of control. Sparty had the sniper, and he was really going off, and it was Sentinels that came out with that 3-2 win over Quadrant, giving Quadrant the 3rd seed, making them start all the way in losers bracket round number 1, while both Sentinels and FaZe started in the winners bracket coming out of pool play. Next up, Pool B. Much compared to Pool A, I would say a much easier time. You have Space Station Gaming, Bound, Eco, Stellar, and Penguin. You had Complexity coming in, by the way, out of open. Doki, King, Nick, Suppressed, and Tusk. G1 coming in, their new roster, Swish, Precision, Neuronical, and Huss. And then Team Navi, one of the top teams in Europe, Jimbo, Mighty, Snaky, and Snipe Drone coming in. And it was ultimately Navi that came out last place in the pools, which means that Complexity coming out not only out of open bracket, but Complexity coming in and making their presence known, not getting knocked out as the open bracket team. In fact, not even starting off in the elimination bracket, because it was Complexity that did go to game 5 with G1, but it also was that same Complexity roster that came out on top, crazy to think a team coming out of open bracket could make that deep of a run, especially with all of the madness that kept happening with complexity, like with all of the outside stories and everything going on, with all of the team changes. They're literally their two superstars in Collect and Cycle getting stripped away from them, one going to Shopify Rebellion, the other going to Native White. Complexity came in with kind of like, a little ragtag team, a team that you ultimately wouldn't expect to be teaming together, made it out of open and came out second in their pools. Absolutely incredible. You gotta give some love to Complexity after that crazy run that they went through. But it was still Space Station Gaming coming out with the 3-0, only dropping one game to G1 and on their way to the winners bracket. That actually might have been the only game that they dropped going into the winners bracket finals. Another spoiler, sorry. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But ultimately, it was SSG that came out as the winner. Them and Complexity starting off in the winners bracket. Meanwhile, G1 starting their journey into bracket play in the elimination bracket, and Navi being sent home a little earlier than expected. Pool 3, Pool C, whatever you want to go by. Optic, Shopify Rebellion, Status Quo, and 6 Karma. Optic Gaming, unless you guys have been sleeping under a rock, APG, Formal, Lucid, and Trippy. Meanwhile, Shopify Rebellion, Cycle, Mental, Rain, and Ryan Noob. Status Quo, Cherished, Diagram, King J, and Piggy. And then you have 6 Karma, top team coming out of Latin America. That's Acid, Lure, Sepstar, and Strikey. This was a fairly tough pool as well, because you have Shopify Rebellion, who have the ability to play Optic really well. You have Status Quo that came in as an open bracket team, who have been one of the top teams in open bracket. Some might have said really belonged going into that Dallas Invitational. A lot of people wanted to ultimately seed them in that Dallas Invitational. And then obviously 6 Karma, who are a very scrappy group as well. No game 5s, and to be honest with you, a lot more 3-0s than I expected to see. But I do want to say, Status Quo, the only team, by the way, the team that came out of open bracket, but the only team to take a game off of Optic in pool play, which Optic looked very clean going into this event. Obviously back in Dallas, it was Quadrant that came out with the 3-0 finish on them on Optic Gaming in pool play, which kind of left them stumbling a little bit. Obviously, Optic finished out in the top 3, so not a bad event whatsoever. They were still coming off of back-to-back LAN champions, did Optic Gaming, but it was Status Quo that came out with the only win on Optic Gaming through pool play. So I would say that Optic still looked fairly decent and fairly good going into bracket play. Obviously things didn't go exactly their way, but again, we'll talk about that a little bit later. Optic and Shopify Rebellion starting off in the winners bracket, Status Quo starting off elimination bracket, and 6 Karma ending their day a little bit earlier, ending the weekend a little bit early. And then we got to Pool D. And let me tell you something. The D in Pool D stands for damn. Because what the hell happened here is my question when it comes to Pool D. Let's talk about it. Cloud9, Nemesis, Rami, Triton, and the newly acquired Septify, formerly of Mantra Gaming. Septify coming in for Cloud9. Native Red coming off of a top 4 finish, even with the sub. You have Boom, the sub, filling in for Druck, which I'm not sure if that's a permanent move. I'm not sure exactly if Druck has been benched or I don't think he was dropped. They didn't make any kind of announcement, but you have Boom, Manny, Soul Snipe, and Talik. Native Whites, this is a weird one. So Native Whites had to play with their coach because Barcode ultimately couldn't get their couldn't get this visa situation figured out. I'll be honest with you guys, I am so under informed when it comes to these visas and licenses and whatever it takes in order for a player to get from outside the country ultimately into the country. But we know that Native are no strangers to these issues. Druck's still suffering from these, and so far Druck hasn't been able to make it to an event, all year. And now Barcode having, if not the same, a very similar issue, living in Canada, moving over from Australia to compete in North America, and ultimately missing out on this opportunity to do so, which, by the way, Tapping Buns, this is now like his third time going this, because Tapping Buns also had teammates that had issues coming into the States as well. So just really strange for Native White. Ultimately, they had to play with their coach, which Trey Try is an amazing player. You guys have seen me play with him on my stream plenty of times. He's an incredible player, a great knowledge for the game, but he's no Barcode, and I think Native White ultimately suffered because of that. But either way, you had Trey Try playing in place of Barcode, Coach Trey Try, Collect, McWin, and Tapping Buns for Native White, and then Bittersweet, which, by the way, might be one of the coolest jerseys and logos, and even like the overall theme of that. I love Bittersweet. Bittersweet Ascending Baseline. They have a very nice aesthetic to that. I really like them. Divinity, Ninjestics, Ryu, and Scoobmeister. I'm still learning, about Bittersweet personally, but I will say, being the fact that you have the first player on mouse and keyboard to play in pools in Scoobmeister, I think it's absolutely sick. So really cool for Bittersweet, but ultimately it was Bittersweet that couldn't come out with the win. I don't actually, now look at that, not even no win, not even a single game, let alone a series. They're going to be knocked out of the tournament early. Native White, even with their coach subbing in, was good enough to make it into third place in their pools. That's going to start them off ultimately into the elimination bracket. Native Red going the distance with Cloud9, going to a Game 5. Not able to come out with the win. So Cloud9 are the ones to top this pool. Coming out of open bracket, we already knew whoever came out of open bracket would ultimately make waves within this pool. And we already knew how amazing Cloud9 was. Y'all didn't know. I had to remind y'all over and over again how good Cloud9 are, because y'all been sleeping on Nemesis, Rare Betrayed, and especially Septify, the new one coming in. But my gosh, Cloud9 ultimately coming out of open bracket and taking the #1 spot. And let's be honest, obviously Pool D was nowhere near full strength. You have two native teams that are playing with subs, and a bittersweet team that's coming in with barely any practice against the North American teams. But it's one thing to see the opportunity, and it's one thing to seize it. And Cloud9 came in, saw a hole within the defense, and they ultimately took it. And I'm proud of them for doing that. Damn good team, well-deserved. Cloud9 coming up as the #1 seed in Pool D. A lot of you guys probably saw that yesterday about what happened. Hopefully that was able to shed a little bit of light onto the situation with what happened in Pool D. But now we get to nitty-gritty. Now we got to talk about championship bracket. I gotta get my G Fuel. By the way, guys, using clickbait, make sure you use code YNOT for 20% off your G Fuel. Make sure you use code YNOT, 20% off of your next G Fuel order. Sorry, I had to plug real quick. Going into round 1 of the winners bracket, you had FaZe coming out with the 301 Complexity. Complexity were phenomenal. FaZe were the best, the damn best team in the league, at least this weekend. FaZe were incredible, and we'll talk about them a little bit more. Cloud9 3-2 over Shopify Rebellion. Then the run continues, because you could have said it was a fluke with Cloud9 coming out of open bracket and then going into pool play and doing their damn thing. What you can't say is a fluke is them beating Shopify Rebellion, who, by the way, just acquired one of the brightest young superstars in the league in Cycle. You can't say that was a fluke. Cloud9 going to a Game 5 against Shopify Rebellion, advancing to the winners bracket round 2, which I believe is winners bracket semifinals. Technically, Optic coming out with the 3 over Native Red. Native Red are a great team. You're still ultimately playing with the sub, and I'm a believer in Bohm. He is nasty. but they're still a very new team. Optic is not. Space Station Gaming coming out with the 3-0 over Sentinels. Sentinels, by the way, newly acquired, a new team coming into this event, barely any practice whatsoever. Had an up and down run going into scrims, ultimately leading to this event. And for them to come out and play as well as they did, beating out a red-hot quadrant, by the way. Definitely talk about them later on, because, again, we know they made history, and we're going to talk about that dynastic run that ultimately they made, but Sentinels looked so good. I think Sentinels ultimately, demand respect for the run that they went on, but Sentinels ultimately have to finish off their tournament in the elimination bracket, sent down to round number 1. Round 2. Fight. Cloud9 keeping their run going, even able to take a game off of FaZe. Hey, that ain't easy. And we said it before, leading all the way into the winners bracket finals. What was it? FaZe. Scroll up here. FaZe came out 3-0, 3-1, 3-0. So literally up until this point, FaZe had only lost 1 game, and that was to Quadrant. We know the run that they went on. Quadrant, one of the best teams in the league, and now it's safe to say that. So the fact that Cloud9 were able to take a game off of them is nothing to not give flowers to. Again, Cloud9 had a phenomenal tournament. If there was a dark horse team, one of the teams in the tournament that wasn't Quadrant or FaZe, definitely Cloud9. An incredible run by them. Meanwhile, on the other side of the bracket, Space Station Gaming 3-0 over Optic. Not exactly what you want to see. We talked about the fact that Optic looked so clean in pool play and only dropping 1 game in pool play themselves. Then coming out with a 3-0 against a very capable Native Red squad. We had the sneaking suspicion that Optic were going to step it up big time. Honestly, we thought Optic were looking so good, and then I'm not upset that you lost to Space Station Gaming, but you guys know me, I hate 3-0s, especially against a series that should have ultimately gone the distance. This should be a game 5, at least a game 4. No shot that this should be a sweep, but it was. Space Station 3 over Optic Gaming, and then FaZe do end up giving that series that we wanted to see ultimately in the winners bracket finals. In fact, your boy got to cast a little winners bracket finals. Actually, one of the biggest matches that I've ever casted personally was me and Wes casting this on Championship Sunday. FaZe 3-2, Space Station Gaming, on their way into the grand finals. And I say it all the time when it comes to the winners bracket finals. It is so hard to make a losers bracket run, to make it into the grand finals, to reset the bracket, and ultimately to win. So I say it lots of times, the team that wins the winners bracket finals wins the tournament. They have that advantage, and it's for a reason. FaZe ultimately winning in the winners bracket finals gave them a very good chance to win the grand finals. We'll talk about that soon. Complexity 3-0 status quo. Both teams actually coming out of open bracket, and both teams having to match up and lose bracket round 1. Somebody had to go and somebody had to advance forward. This time it was Complexity with the 3-0 over status quo. Open bracket run done first for Complexity. Quadra with the 3-1 over Shopify Rebellion. Shopify Rebellion, another very good team. They obviously got back-to-back top 6s, but like I said, leading up into this event, this tournament is tough. The competition was as tight as possible, and not only did the teams look totally different, but even their runs that they had to make through this tournament compared to the last 2 were a lot different within themselves. So I don't think this was a bad tournament for Shopify Rebellion. Could they have done better? Sure. But to me, I wasn't judging them on top 6 or bust. Would have loved to actually see them beat out Cloud9 here. So that's why I'll say we have a little bit of underperformance when it came to Shopify Rebellion. Would have loved to see them beat out Cloud9. but I'm not mad at them losing to Quadrant. Quadrant are a tough matchup stylistically. They want to see a slower team like Shopify Rebellion. They want to see a team like Optic. They love that matchup, this Quadrant. 3-1 for Quadrant. They advance forward. Native Red 3-2 over G1. Big win for Native Red. G1 did a great job of ultimately making pool play, and love the fact that team ultimately got picked up by Gamers First. But now we need G1 to pick up their performance, because you got to come out at least and lose bracket round 2. Gotta. We said it before. You know, G1 are a scrappy bunch, and they're good. They deserve this opportunity. But when you're under G1, the spotlight is on you. And going into the next event, want to see G1 advance at least elimination bracket round 2, and then honestly further, because I think those guys deserve it. So, congratulations for taking Native Red to Game 5. Congratulations for making it competitive and ultimately being within the conversation. But now we want to see you take that next step and beat out a team like Native Red. We'll see what happens from here. Meanwhile, Sentinels 3 over a very weak Native White. Them coming in with a sub of their own. Both Native Red teams, both Native teams did 3-0 for Sentinels, and there's another team that went on a crazy run. I want you guys to pay attention real quick. Both Sentinels and Quadrant started off in elimination bracket round 1. Talk about the runs that ultimately they make. I want to remind you guys, they both started off in elimination bracket round 1. From their Quadrant 3-0 sweep complexity. Big sweep. Sentinels do the same to Native Red. 3-0. Across the board. Both teams advance forward. Elimination bracket round 3. Quadrant go toe-to-toe with Optic Gaming. The very team that took them to a Game 5 back in Dallas and ultimately sent them packing back to France. Back to EU. Quadrant come in and make history during this matchup. Not only coming out with the 3-2 over Optic, not only beating the very team that knocked you out in Dallas, again, back-to-back land champions, the world champion Optic Gaming, but becoming the first team outside of North America to finish in the top 4 in HCS history. Quadrant making history with this match alone. It felt so good that I had the best seat in the house. To be able to cast that, felt so good. We had the best seat in the house to a legend and a Sika and an SLG. These are names, even Chick as well. These are names that I was seeing when I was first getting my start in late Halo 5 in casting. So to see them find the success that ultimately they did this event, and to be able to cast that with them making that history, was absolutely incredible. Really was. It was big congratulations to them for that win alone. Not even talking about going for, but that win alone. Sentinels 3-0, Cloud9, which, if I remind you, went on a run of their own. 3-2 over Shopify Rebellion, even taking a game off of FaZe. But when it came to match against Sentinels, they had top 4 in their eyes, and apparently nobody was stopping them. I do want to point out that Sentinels and Cloud9, this is a matchup that was a rivalry for so long, and this roster looks so, like, think about it, like Sentinels was what, Lethal, Snakebite, World 2, and Frosty, going against Cloud9, which back then was Renegade, Stellar, Eco, and Penguin. This was the rivalry. This was the matchup we wanted to see, and ultimately you're seeing it again. But two teams look totally different. Only one player remains on both of these rosters. I just thought that was actually really interesting. But Sentinels and Quadrant coming out from elimination bracket round 1, all the way through the death pool, and ultimately played each other in elimination bracket round 4, or losers bracket semifinals. And the winner of this gets top 3. Could be the first team to upset the top 3 since freaking year 1. And it was Quadrant that came out with the 3-1. It was one thing to make history, but then to make sure that ain't nobody gonna touch that history. Quadrant come out with the 3-1 win against Sentinels, make it into the top 3 and the elimination bracket finals. Only to get swept by Space Station. Because if there's one thing we learned about that Space Station Gaming roster, those 4 players, you can't spell Grand Finals without Eco. You can't spell Grand Finals without Stellar. You definitely can't spell Grand Finals without Bound. You can't spell Grand Finals without Penguin. And not only did SSG come out with this win, but they sent a message with that 3-0. FaZe saw that message. They read it, crumbled it up, tossed it in the trash. Because FaZe sent not only a message right back to SSG, but to the rest of the league saying, we're here. This is our time. FaZe coming out with a 4-0 sweep in the grand finals. They finished this so fast, it was like they had a hot date, like they had something to do. FaZe with the 4-0, and I said this before on the desk during the grand finals, and I'll say it again. Up until this grand finals, FaZe, they were the best group of guys available. You had 3 Slayers and a player that was willing to pick up the objective and stake by a lot of times be the sole objective player of the actual team. They were a damn good group. They proved it time and time again. They got some big wins. They've got some competitive matches, and a little bit of up and downs, but they were a damn good group, was this FaZe clan. Good clan, if you will. During this grand finals, FaZe were the best team in the league. The way they played in this grand finals, they didn't just look like a group. They didn't just look like a clan. They looked like an actual team. They looked like they had whatever it was that played them in the past, they had figured it out, and they are ready to dominate the league. The same way we thought they might have dominated the league when they first came together is the same way they looked like they were ready to do here in this grand finals. A 4-0 sweep on Space Station Gaming right after Space Station Gaming took you to Game 5, and then 3-0 swept themselves in the elimination bracket finals phase. Unfazed by the run of Space Station Gaming and sending a message of their own. And I got one question for you guys. You think FaZe dominate the rest of the year? Because honestly, there ain't that many tournaments left. It might just be FaZe's time. Thank you guys so much. I really do appreciate it. Thank you. If you like this kind of content, let me know in the comments down below. On top of that, make like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Whenever you interact with the video in any kind of way, it lets the algorithm know that you like it, pushes it to more people, and that really helps your boy. And by the way, when you subscribe, turn that notification bell on. We're putting out good content. You're going to want to see it the moment it comes out. Make sure you subscribe, turn that notification bell on, and I'll see you next time on the HCS Weekly Report.